Morning, everybody, and welcome back to Behind the Curtain of Leadership. Continuing in this series about the self reinforcing program subconscious belief system that quietly runs our lives and affects how we react to everything around us. In previous videos, we talked about what this belief system is, how it works, and how it affects your ability or each one of our ability to make change within ourselves. And today, we're going to be talking about how this affects a leader's ability when trying to inspire change in their teams. Now, not all, but most leaders have a hard time making meaningful change with their teams, which is a problem because making positive changes is one of the key expectations of being a leader, right? Part of your responsibility as a leader is setting the team's vision, adapting to market variations, embracing technology improvements, planning for growth, challenging the status quo, and countless others. Companies don't need leaders who maintain the status quo. They need leaders who inspire their teams to improve. And improvement requires change. So, in this sense, change is always required when it comes to leadership. Now, to be truly effective, change really needs to be more inspiration than motivation, meaning it comes from inside versus outside. And this is where so many companies and leaders fail. They focus on the external or outside enticements to drive change versus working on creating change from inside the person. The problem with making any of these changes is that every single person on the team has their own fully developed, fully reinforced, programmed subconscious belief system that supports their daily routine in personal and professional life. And this belief system automatically and subconsciously pushes back against anything that doesn't fit its narrative, right? What it's come to believe to be true, positive, or possible versus what it thinks is false, negative, or impossible. And all changes will engage this belief system in each person, okay? Now, all individuals on your team collectively become the belief system of the team itself, and therefore then the team is being subconsciously guided by this. This is part of culture. When you talk about culture, this is part of what creates that intangible, emotional, psychological culture within your team. So remember the challenges you have with just making change within yourself. And then think about dealing with all the individual people on your team and your company and the difficulty that they're going to have with change in themselves. And then think about the team collectively and how difficult it is going to be to change the team's mindset, the team's subconscious belief system. It's a pretty daunting task, really, when you think about it. So anytime you as the leader suggest a new way of doing something or a new way of evaluating something, a product, a process, a new way of looking at something, you're going to have three problems. Okay, first, individuals may more or less than the team based on their individual belief system. The collective team, the collective belief system will also push back on you. And third, they really don't want to change because change challenges the routine they built their lives on. Okay, this is why change is hard for all leaders. With a team, the collective belief system is made up of all the individual belief systems, but also remember not all individuals on the team are the same. And some have stronger wills than others. So therefore, the team belief system may not be reflective of each individual person. What this means is that you may have sub-leaders on your team who have a stronger emotional connection with the team than you do, and stronger with the ones who will simply just prefer to go along. So if change is so challenging, why not just avoid it? And to be honest, this is exactly what happens with most of our leaders and so many of our companies. They don't understand the emotional aspect of change. They try external motivators that don't last, and they don't have time to figure out why it isn't working. Okay? When you get down to it, that's usually why change doesn't work for teams and companies. And to be honest, most leaders don't really care that much about the emotional opinions of those on their teams simply because they're too busy trying to drive results. Okay, hit the numbers. How most companies and leaders rate the individuals and the team's performance and their value. And this is why people and leaders get stuck in their routines. They just don't want to deal with all of this. So as a leader, what do you do? Well, if you think back to the three core elements of leadership, one, making a positive emotional connection with the team and the individuals. Two, inspiring them to be better tomorrow than they are today at something that's important to them. And three, caring more about the team's goals than your own goals. Now, if you take those on one at a time, then you have a strategy to drive change. And it ties pretty much everything I've talked about so far regarding leadership back together. So let's look at this. Number one, if you've made a positive emotional connection with the team, then their belief system should at least be open to your ideas of change. Okay, it doesn't mean they're automatically going to embrace them and it's going to be great, but they will be open. On the other hand, if you've made no emotional connection or a negative connection, their belief system will automatically push back against you. Okay, that's the first one. Second one, if you've established yourself as one who inspires others to improve personally for their benefit, not for yours, then they'll see your change ideas as having potential to make them better, and they'll be a little more open to it. If you've established yourself as one who motivates through external means, money, incentives, awards, recognition, then they'll see the changes you're suggesting through the light of what's in it for them versus not what's in it for the team. Now remember, this belief system is self-reinforcing, meaning that it's going to look back at past experiences to either strengthen or question their subconscious beliefs about you as a leader and what you may want. So your track record is going to work for you or against you in this case. And the third item, if you've created a team first culture over a me first culture, then they will see your changes as being for the team's benefit, which includes them, instead of something that will only benefit you. Now, if through your previous actions you've created an environment where the team knows you only care about yourself, then they will emotionally resist any changes you suggest because they're going to see it as only benefiting you and not them. Now, does this mean you can't implement change if you don't achieve all of these three elements? No, of course not. You still can, and you may be able to just simply through your drive and forcefulness to be successful in implementing changes, but they will not be nearly as effective as they could be if the team cared on an emotional level, and you as a leader will always be fighting against your team versus with the team, okay? Or they with you. So if you remember another video about buy-in, this is another area where getting agreement versus emotional buy-in will show up in a big way anytime you're dealing with change. You can always get the agreement, right? The intellectual buy-in, but you'll never gain their emotional buy-in, which is required for truly effective leaders and teams. So remember, as leaders, we're responsible for inspiring change in our businesses, right? It's our job to grow, improve, change, right? That's part of the leader's job. So here's the bottom line when you're trying to create team change. Remember, people generally don't like change, right? They like predictability. They like routine. They like to know what time they get up in the morning. They like to know what happens next, what time they go to work, what's going to happen during the day, what time they leave, what's on the schedule for the evening, only to start over again tomorrow. People get emotionally attached to their routines. A typical workday is part of their routine, right? It's emotional security. Don't ever forget that one. The second one, anytime you suggest a significant change, their self-reinforcing program, subconscious belief system, which they're emotionally attached to, will come into play, and you need to be ready for their subconscious reactionary resistance to your ideas. It doesn't mean you won't get, but their initial reaction may well be simply to just resist the change. You need to understand that. Number three, the resistance could be minimal or it could be severe. It all depends on how emotionally attached they are to their own belief system and the team is to its belief system. I mean, individuals could become agitated, outspoken against change. They could stop interacting with people around them and kind of withdraw from the team. They could make comments to others, kind of undermining the change. They could slow down their production and performance. They could start missing work. They could show up late. They could leave early, or any number of ways this could manifest. The point is, it will show up to some extent, and they may not even understand why they're reacting this way. Remember, this is all subconscious, and it's been running in their subconscious their entire lives, and now you're challenging that. Now, the fourth and last one is the collective belief system of the team is different from the sum of the individual belief systems. If you have a strong-willed sub-leader who has a stronger connection to other team members, it may appear that these sub-leaders actually speak for the team, but they may not in reality. This is where more natural traits of leaders show up and really help out. The empathy, the caring about others, the compassion, the selfless giving, etc. But those alone are not enough. it requires another critical characteristic, and that characteristic is self-awareness. The self-aware leader will eventually recognize that maybe it isn't the team with the problem, but maybe it's themselves that have the problem. When they realize this, their desire to succeed and willingness will serve them to drive them to evaluate themselves and look internally for improvement first. When a leader isn't aware of their own misunderstanding of why their subconscious belief system makes change hard for themselves and the team, they won't easily try to understand what they could be doing better. Look, this is a pretty deep topic. It goes down to the subconscious level in each one of us. But you have to realize what's driving and guiding us so much of the time, especially if you're not aware of it. So I hope this gave you something to think about if you're struggling with team change. I share a lot of similar ideas in my other videos on my YouTube channel if you're interested. Links below. And I would suggest maybe if this is interesting to you, go back and watch the other videos in this series, okay? Because they all build on each other as we go along. Now, the link to my book is also below, where I talk about many situations that leaders face. Right here is my book, Knowledge and Wisdom in Leadership and Life. But I talk about these situations that leaders face, not from a typical company first mindset or corporate America mindset, but from a realistic, practical perspective about what really works with people in the real world in real time. Next video, I'm going to be discussing a little more about self-awareness and how this plays such an important role with each of us, regardless if we're in a formal leadership role or not. And remember, we're all leaders, first and foremost, of our own lives. Many times we're leaders or co-leaders with our family, could be in community, could be with youth groups. We're all leaders in some regard, not just at work. So this is really applicable to all of us. Anyway, thank you very much for listening, and we'll talk to you again.